They laughed when a broken millionaire adopted a homeless black girl, then learned she was a genius. Enjoy the story. The rain fell in cold, heavy sheets the day Margaret Wilson spotted her beneath the faded awning of Rothman's bookstore. 63 and straight back despite the weather, Margaret clutched her umbrella tighter as she observed the child. No more than 8, the girl sat cross-legged on a piece of damp cardboard, dark fingers moving with practiced precision as she folded scraps of paper into intricate animals. Before her lay a careful display, swans, foxes, elephants, all crafted with remarkable intricacy. "Would you like to buy one, ma'am?" the child asked, voice calm and dignified despite her circumstances. Margaret nearly continued walking. After 40 years as Chicago's most respected mathematics professor, recently forced into early retirement, what could she possibly offer anyone now? But their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted. The girl's gaze held no pity for the aging black woman before her, only quiet determination. Margaret knelt, her knees protesting as she picked up a small paper fox. "Did you make these?" she asked, examining the perfect, deliberate folds. The girl nodded. "I'm Ruby. I learned from a library book. They're $1, but they'll last forever if you keep them dry." That simple line pierced through the fog that had enveloped Margaret's mind since Dean Harrison had called her into his office and suggested her outdated methodologies might benefit from passing the torch. After 4 decades of pioneering work in computational mathematics, they discarded her like yesterday's newspaper. Ruby's stomach growled loudly, interrupting Margaret's thoughts. "Have you eaten today?" Margaret asked. Ruby's hesitant nod didn't match her hollow cheeks. Her cardboard sign read simply, "Please help, foster home closed." "Come," Margaret said, surprising herself. "There's a diner around the corner." At Gino's diner, Ruby devoured her grilled cheese as if it might vanish. While waiting for dessert, she absent-mindedly scribbled on a napkin. Margaret glanced down and froze. Not childish doodles, but advanced mathematical equations, patterns and predictions that surpassed even her understanding. "Where did you learn this?" Margaret asked, a voice barely above a whisper. Ruby shrugged. "I just see things. Numbers help me think." That night, when Ruby mentioned the shelter was full, Margaret found herself saying, "I've got a spare room." People whispered when word got out, a retired black professor taking in a homeless child from the street. The department administrators, who'd pushed Margaret out, now watched with skeptical eyes. Her former colleagues muttered about savior complexes and inappropriate attachments. But Margaret wasn't trying to save Ruby. Perhaps Ruby was saving her. The spare room that had once housed Margaret's research materials gradually transformed. Mathematical journals remained, but now shared space with coloring books, advanced. Textbooks mingled with fairy tales. Ruby made toast while Margaret taught her how to brew the perfect cup of tea. They created a rhythm, these two souls who'd been cast aside. Then came the nightmares, Ruby's. Cries in the night, food hidden under mattresses, the trauma of foster homes where children were commodities. "You don't need to hide food anymore," Margaret assured her. "This home is yours as much as mine." Ruby didn't respond. Trust takes time, and words weren't enough. When Margaret enrolled Ruby in school, the administration hesitated. "We'll need to test her first," the principal said, eyeing Margaret skeptically. "Foster children often fall behind." The test results stunned everyone except Margaret. Ruby was placed 3 grades ahead, yet still finished assignments before anyone else. Teachers grew frustrated. "She corrects us," one complained during a parent-teacher conference. "It's disruptive." Margaret's spine stiffened. "Perhaps she's correcting you because you're wrong." Walking out, Ruby whispered, "You didn't have to defend me like that." "I know," Margaret replied, "but I wanted to." When Margaret petitioned for guardianship, social services descended like vultures. The social worker, a young white woman named Barbara, scrutinized Margaret's apartment with barely concealed disdain. "You're applying for guardianship at your age?" she asked, pen poised over her clipboard. "With no parenting experience, on a retired professor's income." Margaret met her gaze steadily. "I'm offering stability, education, and love." What else? Does a child need? Barbara's pen scratched across paper. We'll be watching closely, Dr. Wilson. What could Margaret offer this brilliant child? The question haunted her on sleepless nights when doubt crept in like the Chicago wind through window cracks. She was 63, living on a pension that barely covered her needs. And in a world that saw them both as disposable, what protection could she provide? Each afternoon, Margaret helped Ruby with advanced mathematics, while the child created increasingly complex origami structures. One day, Ruby looked up from a multi-dimensional paper construction and asked, "Why did they make you leave the university?" Margaret's hands stilled on the teacup. They said it was time for new blood, new perspectives. "But your theorem on computational efficiency was right," Ruby said matter-of-factly. "I checked it." The words hung in the air between them. How had this child understood work that had taken Margaret decades to develop? The same work that Dean Harrison had dismissed as interesting but ultimately impractical before giving her a research grant to Roger Tillman, a mediocre mathematician half her age. Margaret set down her cup carefully. "Sometimes being right isn't enough, Ruby." The next morning, an envelope arrived containing an invitation to the university's annual mathematics symposium addressed to Margaret. A handwritten note from her former colleague, Dr. Helena Santos, read, "We miss your voice, please come." "We should go," Ruby said, reading over Margaret's shoulder. "Not to impress anyone, just to show them we're still here." The auditorium hummed with activity when they arrived. Margaret wore her best dress, a deep burgundy that complemented her silver hair. Ruby wore a crisp blue dress that Margaret had splurged on despite the budget strain. As they entered, conversations faltered, gazes shifted, the woman they'd discarded returning like a ghost. Dean Harrison approached, false warmth radiating from his smile. "Margaret! What a pleasant surprise! And who's this?" "This is Ruby, my ward," Margaret replied, her hand protective on Ruby's shoulder. "How charitable of you," he said, then turned to the man beside him. "Roger was just explaining his breakthrough in computational mathematics, the very field you dabbled in, if I recall." Roger Tillman, younger, white, smugly confident, stepped forward. "Dr. Wilson, I've built upon your preliminary work, though I've had to correct several fundamental flaws in your approach." Margaret felt Ruby tense beneath her hand. Before she could respond, Ruby spoke. "Your math is wrong," she said clearly. Laughter rippled through the nearby listeners. Tillman's face tightened with annoyance. "Excuse me?" Ruby stepped forward, took the marker from Tillman's hand, and approached his presentation board. In swift, confident strokes, she identified 3 critical errors in his equations, then proceeded to solve the problem correctly, using Margaret's original theorem as foundation. The room fell silent. "That's not possible," Tillman whispered. Dr. Santos moved closer, examining Ruby's work. "She's right," she announced, turning to face the crowd. "And this solution matches Margaret's original paper, the one we rejected for publication last year." All eyes turned to Dean Harrison, who had gone pale. "I don't understand how—" "Perhaps," Margaret said, her voice carrying through the silent room. "You should have read my work more carefully before dismissing it. And perhaps," she added, reaching into her bag and extracting a folder, "you should read my lawsuit for age discrimination and intellectual theft before you speak another word." She handed the folder to Harrison. "My attorneys will be in touch. And yes, I have attorneys now, quite good ones, in fact." As whispers erupted around them, Dr. Santos approached. "The department chair of Princeton called me last week. They're looking for someone to lead their new computational mathematics division. After seeing this," she gestured to Ruby's corrections, "I think they might be interested in consulting with you both." Later that evening, as they walked along Lake Michigan, Ruby asked, "Are we really moving to Princeton?" Margaret smiled, watching the sunset paint the water gold. "Only if you want to, but first I need to finish what I started here. Sometimes justice takes time, like a complex origami fold. You taught me that." Ruby slipped her hand into Margaret's. "I never thought anyone would fight for me." "I never thought I'd fight again," Margaret admitted. "Yet here we are." They stood together, watching the city lights flicker on across the water. 2 brilliant minds the world had tried to discard, now standing tall against the gathering dusk. Have you ever felt overlooked or underestimated because of who you are? Please share your experience in the comments. In the months that followed, Margaret's lawsuit sent shockwaves through the academic community. 3 other professors came forward with similar complaints. The university settled rather than face public scrutiny, establishing a scholarship fund for marginalized students in STEM fields. Margaret was offered her position back with tenure. She declined. Instead, Margaret and Ruby moved to Princeton, where they co-authored a revolutionary paper on mathematical applications in origami structures. Universities that had once ignored Margaret now competed for her guest lectures. Ruby, enrolled in advanced classes, thrived under Margaret's guidance. On Ruby's 10th birthday, Margaret presented her with adoption papers. "You're already my family," Ruby said, eyes bright with tears. "Yes," Margaret agreed, "but now the world will know it too." The formal adoption ceremony attracted unexpected attention. The judge, an older black woman who had followed Margaret's case, smiled as she signed the final papers. "Dr. Wilson," she said, "I was a mathematics major 40 years ago. Your early papers inspired me to keep going when my professors said women, especially black women, weren't suited for theoretical mathematics." Margaret nodded, understanding the unspoken connection between them. "And now you're a judge." "And now I'm a judge," the woman confirmed before turning to Ruby. "And you, young lady, what will you become?" Ruby considered the question carefully. "I'm going to be someone who helps other kids like me, someone who sees them when no one else does." The foundation they established 2 years later did exactly that. The origami theorem, named for Ruby's paper foxes, identified and supported brilliant children from disadvantaged backgrounds. Margaret's expertise and Ruby's first-hand experience created a program unlike any other. On the 5th anniversary of their meeting, as they stood on the street corner where Ruby had once sold paper animals, Margaret said, "You know, I could have just bought a fox and walked away." Ruby smiled, taller now but with the same determined eyes. "I thought you were helping me. I didn't realize you'd be the one to save me." In the lobby of their foundation headquarters, displayed in a glass case among academic awards and published papers, sat the very first origami fox, a reminder that sometimes recognition comes from the most unexpected places, and that true genius cannot be defined by systems created to exclude it. The greatest solutions, like the most beautiful origami, require seeing beyond what others believe possible, folding reality into new shapes until it reflects not what is, but what could be. When the world tells you that you don't matter, sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to continue creating beauty from whatever scraps you've been given. You are amazing. If you genuinely enjoyed this story, please leave a like and subscribe. It's a great feedback for me. If it made you feel seen, heard, or simply reminded you that change is still possible, share it with someone who needs a little hope today. See you.